Good afternoon. It's a great. It's a pleasure to be here, and I thank you for being here to celebrate with us Black History Month and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. We will begin the program with the Hippocratic Notes. Did I say that right? From the School of Medicine. A little song first, please.
Hello. How's everyone? Hi. So we're the Hippocratic Notes. We are the School of Medicine's one and only a cappella group consisting of med students and grad students. And we're so excited to be here today, and I hope you enjoy our songs. And we're singing... Oh, and please sing with us and feel free to join in.
Thank you. Those are our future doctors. Isn't that phenomenal? So thank you all again. Again, greetings. When I think back about the past performances and celebrations we've had here for Black History Month, I particularly remember the speakers of many of these programs, and we have a good one for you today as well. But some of you who have been here, please remember with me some of these speakers. One of them was Professor Marco Williams. Professor Williams is a professor at Northwestern University and a movie director. And you may remember what he showed us in images up on the screens. He showed us pictures where he had gone around the country and taken photographs of various Martin Luther King Jr. boulevards around the nation. I'll tell you what I remember. I remember dirt roads. I remember small roads going through industrial sections of cities. I remember roads that separated the haves and have-nots. He showed us that these roads have not properly reflected the legacy of Dr. King. It made me certainly think about our Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard just behind me, and reminding me of how much we have yet to do. We have much work left in this city and next to this boulevard of work to do. Some of you may also remember Chief Justice Judge Bell, the first African-American to lead the Maryland court system. And you may recall what Justice Bell told us. He said in 1960, when he was a young man, he protested segregation in the city of Baltimore. He was arrested. He was convicted by the Maryland courts. He was then had that conviction overturned later by the higher Maryland court. And of course, 27 years later, Judge Bell became the Chief Justice of the state of Maryland. I think justice was served in that case, and I remember his talk very, very well. When I think of Judge Bell, I think of words like stand up for your rights and the rights of others. Very accomplished colleague. Some of you may also remember another speaker, Sherilyn Ifill, a School of Medicine professor, and at the time president of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. We saw a very powerful advocate in her terms. She told us something, this was in 2017, and I want to quote what she said. It was, "What a time this is in our nation." Then she said, "We are in a struggle for the very soul of democracy." Now, when I think about those words, they're pretty prophetic, are they not? And she foretold the future of what's happening, and I again learned from a very capable leader in the NAACP. There were two other people I remember. One of them I'm sure you'll remember from last year, Ms. Angela Also Brooks, a graduate of the School of Law here at the University of Maryland, Carey School of Law, now the Prince George's County Executive, and a great role model. And what did I learn from her? I learned from her that greatness can still be achieved in spite of humble roots, racial discrimination, and facing disadvantaged circumstances. She is on her way to greatness in this state of Maryland, and I look forward to seeing more of her and learning more from her. And then last, and I don't think he's here today, but that's our own Professor Larry Gibson. Some of you may remember he gave the first talk, and he spoke about his new book on Thurgood Marshall. Now, of course, Professor Gibson is a scholar in his own right and has had a powerful effect on this state and its politics. But he gave us insights into how Mr. Marshall, what made him tick, how he shaped this nation. Were Larry here, I would thank him when I find him and give him grief for not being here today. I will thank him as well. And I hope that he'll keep us on tasks. So I think when I thought back about this, what did I find valuable about these celebrations? Here's what I found valuable. They made me sit and listen. They made me sit and learn about other people's experience, what it's like to grow up in Baltimore and live here, what it's like to grow up in an underserved community, a disadvantaged community, what it's like to live in a racially prejudiced community. I also learned other things, and that is, what can this university, all of us, myself included, what can we do to make progress in making these injustices more just? So I hope that you will all keep that in mind again as we hear from our speaker today. Now, I want to give one thanks. You all know, I think, that we have a Diversity Advisory Council committee. It's called the DAC affectionately. And it's the DAC that plans this meeting. It's the DAC that finds our wonderful speakers. It is the engine behind this celebration. So I want to thank all of those of you who are here, particularly its chair, Dr. Elsie Steins. Could you stand up so that we could please say congratulations? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think that the DAC has done it again with our current speaker. They have found a great individual to follow this path that I just described for you. It's Dr. Roni Ellington. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ellington. Dr. Ellington is Associate Professor in Advanced Studies, Leadership and Policy at Morgan State University. She is a champion of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, particularly as it applies to minority students. She has studied new and transformative methods to educate these students in the STEM model, and I look forward to hearing about her experiences and advice. I urge you to do what I will do, and that is listen, and I hope learn from what she has to say. So I give you Dr. Ellington. Dr. Ellington.
So, I always get nervous right before I hit this pole. So one, I just want to thank the advisory committee for inviting me. I'm always humbled when I'm asked to speak and use my voice to forward something that matters greatly to me. I don't take it lightly. I prepare my words very strategically because I believe in the power of your word to actually make a difference. So if you came here to just sit back and be on your phones, turn them off. Because I really have thought deeply about how STEM education and access and opportunity is a vehicle for realizing Martin Luther King's dream. So I am humbled to be here. But I'm also angry. Now, if any of you seen my TED Talk called The Angry Black Woman's Rant on the Future of STEM Education, I just advise you to do it. It'll give me a little more hits on the TEDx website. But in that, I'm being funny. Oh, y'all laughed at that. Y'all took that. I was like, are they going to get it? So in that rant, I talked about how passionate I am about the work in STEM education and how I'm angry that for all these years we've been talking about diversity, inclusion, and equity in STEM education, yet the outcomes have been dismal at best. This perceived anger has not been about making anybody wrong or actually being in an uproar, if you will. It is about our failure to actually address the real systemic issues that Black and brown children in particular face in the STEM pipeline. In some places, I call it places of oppression. Because in these spaces, many of our students are not able to realize their full potential, given various reasons and well-meaning folk. However, as an angry Black woman, here's why I'm angry. Because those of us, even Martin Luther King, said, I will not rest until equality exists for all. So, I would just like you to just take whatever passion that you hear from me. You can frame it as anger, you can frame it how you want. But understand that this access and opportunity and diversity in STEM is a civil rights issue, and I will stand and speak on the behalf of those who can't speak for themselves. So, I just want to be transparent about that. So, I was asked by the president to bring the Martin Luther King message along with my STEM message, and I had the privilege of reading over 11 speeches done by Dr. Martin Luther King. I don't think I've ever read that much of his work, because what I wanted to do was not just talk about the dream speech, which, you know, many people, I have a dream, right? But he did a body of speeches that really gave me a new kindred spirit with Dr. King. And as I was going through his work, this statement came out: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I just want you to be with that. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And what he talked about in this speech when he said this, he said, you know, the realization of justice for any person, community, or nation rests on their ability to end injustice. And when something is unjust, what you notice is inequitable outcomes. And nowhere is these inequitable outcomes more pervasive than in the STEM pipeline. Before I go to those statistics, I want to tell you a little bit about me. That's me as a kid. You know I'm from the 70s, right? You know that 70s dress? That's me. And then that's me as the homecoming queen or something, Miss Spingarn, and then there's me in my nice little poof. But I want to show, before I get into the logistics on and the statistics on STEM and why I feel that this is the next civil rights issue, a lot of the themes that I'm going to discuss stem from my own experience. So I grew up in Washington, D.C., back when it was called Chocolate City. It's a little different now. But I grew up in DC, and I grew up on K Street. I lived in a basement apartment, and I lived with my mom and dad, and I had parents who loved me and had high expectations for me. I remember my father always saying, don't bring no B's in this house, right? So you know, make straight A's and all of that. But they didn't necessarily understand the ins and outs of you can make an A in one class and then not necessarily be equivalent to an A in another class. They didn't really understand that, but they encouraged me to do well. So I was there, and I did my A's, and I thought I did well. And then when I got out of elementary school, I was in Brown Junior High School, and I was in this section called 7-6. Now, if those of you remember when tracking was heavy and your status was dictated by the section you were in, so 7-1 was high, 7-2, 7, and on to 7-6 and 7-7. So I was in 7-6. You do the, okay? So I was bringing home A's, and I was in 7-6, and in that class I did well. I took, the basic courses, but at some point in my trajectory, actually, a white male geography teacher said I was misplaced. And I can bet that I was probably in 7-6 because I've always been rambunctious. So, my rambunctionism probably ended me there. So in 8th grade, I was moved from 7-6 to 8-1. This was critical because I was this 7-6 girl going to 8-1, and I had a completely different experience. It was like the GT program. So in that program, I got access to a totally different type of curriculum. I took algebra in the 8th grade. I took geometry in the 9th grade. And it was there that I realized A's ain't A's everywhere. And they don't mean the same thing, depending on where you find yourself. So it was there where I met Miss Mitchell, who was my 8th grade math teacher, and she called me a genius. I had never been called a genius in my life. And I would expand Pascal's triangle. For those of you in math know what I'm talking about. I learned that in the 8th grade, how to use Pascal's triangle to expand polynomials. And I was doing some very rigorous math in the 8th grade. But I'm telling you this story not because of my excellent math ability from the 8th grade, but I'm telling you this because context matters. Where children land matters. What they have access to matters. And had that geography teacher, particularly this white male geography teacher, made that recommendation, you may not see me here. So let's fast forward. There I go. So after being in the GT program in junior high school, I graduated with the 3rd highest honors in junior high under Ronnie Worthy and Leela Davis. I'll never forget it because I'll never forget them. Me and Ronnie are, to this day, we were the Ronnies in the class, and he came out on top, but I surrendered. And then I went to high school, where I went to Spingarn Senior High School in DC. It's no longer open right now, but I was there, and one of the things I did significantly there is I advocated for a calculus class that they didn't offer, because I had taken advanced courses, and in that time, by the time I got to like Algebra 2, there was no class for me, so I took trig in the summer, and then I came back and advocated for a calculus class. I didn't know why. I just figured I needed the next class. Where is it? Again, I want you to I'm bringing up these things for some context. So I advocated for that calculus class, and one of the teachers was gracious enough to teach me on his off period, calculus, and I was by myself. And it was there, and then I went on to Morgan State University. I majored in math. I got a master's in math, and then ultimately a doctoral degree in math education. This is where you can clap. So I share this. Whistles too, I take it. I bring this up because had it not been for this vital shift in context, someone recognizing my genius, my gifts and talents, and then using the system and their GT. Now, again, I think a lot of black and brown parents don't understand that just because your child gets A's, it doesn't mean they're getting great educations. You got to be aware of the context and what they're being exposed to. And for some reason, early on, I understood that the science math pipeline was critical to my success. At the time, I didn't know I was going to be a math major, but for some reason, I knew that if I stopped my math trajectory, I would be frozen out of certain opportunities. So I decided, I'm going to take calculus, and it was calculus-esque, but I was in there. And so as I think about this statement by Martin Luther King, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. So here I am today, refusing to be silent about what I noticed in the STEM pipeline, where deficit narratives of black and brown children are pervasive. This notion of equality and ability and who gets access to STEM education is grounded in beliefs about who we are and what we can do. And as I thought about Martin Luther King this day, I said, he stood in the face of that. He was not silenced, and it cost him his life. And then I went to his last speech, the one before he died, before he was assassinated. And he said these words, and they resonated with me. People were telling him he was getting threats because of his voice. And he said this, "Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've seen the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." And I share those sentiments because I may not see the day where one's access and ability and opportunity in STEM is not predicted by race, color, SES, and all of these external factors, but it's by the brilliance that one brings into this world. I may not necessarily see the day when that is the norm, but I tell you, I've seen the promised land. So here I am. Takes my business partner for this picture. Here I am, bringing the total of who I am to my own journey as a scholar, my personal experiences, my primary intention of shifting the narratives of how black and brown children are not STEM people, or they don't represent, we need a representation amount, right? I want to say that all students are STEM people if given the right environment, right? So that's really my message. This idea that some people can and some people can't is a human construct, not a divine one. So that is what I've been about. And also, what was interesting to me was when I first started this work, and I was interested particularly in African American students in STEM, there were very few places where I actually saw the voices of the successful students. Everybody was talking about how people weren't making it, and we got a gap, and we in the gap, and we are the gap. But no discussion about those of us who, despite that, actually achieved. So that was my bright idea for my dissertation. I was like, well, shoot, we need to talk to students who've been successful and ask them what had them be successful. Don't you think that's a good idea? Okay, so that's where my dissertation work, I looked at some students who were successful African-American students, and they actually gave me the genesis of the framework that I've written about subsequently. But it came from their voice, not mine. So that's a whole nother story. And I do work, and I still look at asset models. Anytime I'm hearing people talking about any deficit-based narrative, I'm disinterested. So, why STEM, you ask, Roni? Why not English, psychology, right? I could be in any discussion here. Well, We know that STEM education gives access to jobs and careers that require innovation, problem solving. And when you look at the pipeline, this is a representation of, out of 100 students who enter college to obtain a bachelor's degree, only 8 of them graduate and are working in STEM after 10 years. Now, this is the big number. Now, when you aggregate this for African Americans, Latinos, women, literally the numbers are so small, you might have a foot there or eyebrow, right? Because you know how the graphic, you can't even construct the graphic because the numbers are very dismal and they haven't shifted much in the past 50 years. And then when you look at the reality of the educational pipeline, Black students in particular are what I call washed out. When I say washed out, I mean they're still there, but their brilliance and passion is being squelched by systems of oppression and well-meaning folk who give them labels early on about who they are, what they can do, primarily due to cultural mismatches in the classroom, not necessarily because of the real gifts that these students bring. So this pipeline starts to dwindle. It should be getting tighter as we go. Them little edges, you see where the little knobs are? It's like a squeeze happening. And so children leave the pipeline uninspired, ready to go, and if they do stay, there's some batter and bruising that occurs. So you say, well, Roni, what's up with that? Here's my question. I want y'all to sit with this question. After 50 years of our struggle for equality, equity, inclusion, you can call it what you want, why has little changed as it relates to the outcomes of Black and brown students in the STEM pipeline, as it relates to achievement, success, persistence, and equitable participation? Now notice, there's been a lot of conversation and strategies. We have a nice diversity action council here. I know you guys are well-meaning. We're all out here in these streets promoting equity, diversity. It's a good thing. Yes, it is. Yet, it's not happening. Why do you think that is? We didn't get the right strategy? No, that ain't it. We shifted air travel in 6 months after 9/11. 6 months. You do the math. We're doing 50 years. Yeah, that's exactly what I said when I realized the numbers have not shifted. They've done a little, but very little shifting. Well, Dr. King has the answer, believe it or not. Y'all ready? Probably ain't heard this speech. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. When I read that, I said, look at here, look at here. We talk about his dream, but we don't talk about the power. He has some things that he said that really nudged the envelope. So let me tell you what he said in the letter from Birmingham jail. He said this: I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached a regrettable conclusion that the Negro stumbling block in this stride towards freedom is not the White Citizens Council or the KKK, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, than, I gotta say it right, negative absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. I agree with your goal, and he's saying, these white liberals are saying this, I agree with your goal, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action. Who paternalistically believe that he can set a timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. Now that's his words on this nice MLK occasion. So I would assert that in STEM education there's this lukewarm acceptance of black and brown children in these highly competitive academic spaces that lead them to more employment opportunities, greater ability to earn a living, to be innovators and business people. There's a lukewarm acceptance, and our "it will take time" mentality is causing us to make it okay. Because if we just get one more meeting together, one more strategy in place, it'll handle it, or one more diversity officer. We didn't have the right one, that's why it still looks the way it looks. And Martin Luther King says that that is more frustrating than outright rejection. So I propose that we stop trying to change that which by its very definition won't be changed because it is a part of the fabric of American society. This racially based, gender-based hierarchy for which many people benefit and are unwilling to give up that benefit for inclusion, diversity, and equity. Let's just call a thing a thing. Because anytime the policy starts to press the buttons of those who don't want to rock the boat, then we got to shift gears to accommodate fragility and uncomfortableness, if you will. So in order for us to really make a difference here, we got to move from change to transformation. And transformation is a shift in how we see what we see. It is a shift in what matters to us. I assert that we need to take equity and take it off the margins and put it in the center of our work. Let's not just have a meeting or a day or a group that deals with that over there. Let's bring this discussion of what the barriers are to diversity and inclusion and full participation to the foreground. Y'all can clap, yes. Let's get off our lukewarm comfortabilities and do the real work of the inner and structural shifts that have to happen for black and brown children and women and all those who've been historically marginalized to sit at the table, not at the back table, but at the real table where decisions are made. So here you go. Here's what I would argue. So my work is specifically in the STEM space, but me and my partners, we do this work not only in the STEM space, but in corporations. We really are about changing the narrative and changing the conversation and having those real conversations that move the needle for real, not for play. Y'all know when y'all in the play meeting, where people are talking a lot, but not really saying what's so, right? They're just stepping, going along to get along, not to disrupt. And as our provost at Morgan, Dr. Crompton Young says, we got to innovate, transform, and disrupt. I love her for that. Disrupt the systems that keep people out. So my just small contribution to that effort is through my own work. I've written about a transformative framework for STEM education. And what I have done, I mean, there's research to support each of these areas, and I'm not going to bore you with the research, but as a researcher, I can give you the citations if you wish, is the messages that we send, particularly black and brown children, lead them to feel isolated, alienated, and out of place. So what I would argue is that for us to be inclusive and really transformative, there are 4 things we need to pay attention to. One is identity. Who are we and who do we believe those students are? And I mean tell the real truth, not the politically correct truth, but the truth that says not all children in the classroom are seen as geniuses, as brilliant. So, and also training these children to see themselves as STEM people. Here's one thing you can do right now. Don't tell people they're math people or STEM people. Oh, you're a math person, because that implies there are other people that aren't. Tell all the students, I don't care if they getting whatever, just say you're a math person in progress. Say something else, but please don't say that. They're not a math person. They're not a scientist, because they are. So that will help shift their identities for one that is outside of the science and STEM disciplines to somebody who can be included. So here's the message I want y'all to send. We are competent and confident lifelong STEM learners, doers, and community members. We contribute to our communities through our STEM learning. This is the message that not only teachers need to give, but also school administrators, institutional leaders, that we, and the word we is there because in the Black and brown community, we really are about each other. We are each other's keeper. It's not just about my ascension, it's about everyone. The next thing I would encourage you to do in this transformative framework, that anybody who is working with Black and brown children, women, anybody who's been historically marginalized, need to stop saying they are content teachers. You don't teach content, you teach people. People are at the source of the work that we do. And seeing yourself as an agent of liberation will shift your focus on trying to cover content to someone who can liberate minds. So educators are more than content experts. We are game changers, critical partners in developing children. We interrogate our own beliefs, perspectives, and practices to promote equity and social justice. This is the message I encourage those of us who work in environments with students to take on. I know it's rough and I know you might feel away, but nobody died of discomfort. Not that I check. And then instead of having people go through this, what I call disruptive schooling, let's start thinking about the structures of school to make them more transformational. The way we do business, and my girl Shantae is out there, Positive School Initiatives. She's on the forefront, making that happen, having people interrogate the ways in which we think about schooling, professional development, curriculum, instruction, and making those things more about what we can provide students to liberate themselves. So I call that transformative schooling. Knowing that STEM is critical, vital, and relevant to each of us and our communities, and we use our knowledge to solve real-world problems, not just do exercises of futility. And then there's community. First of all, you cannot have transformation without partnering with the community. A lot of the public health researchers and so forth, they're noticing you got to have these community participatory models in order to move public health in a certain direction. And one of my good friends, Dr. Deborah Forholder, is on the forefront of that. She actually has a Forefront podcast. Love her. But we got to think outside of the school building and the academic institution and start to build real partnerships with community. So this is a framework I propose, and you can't just take the ones that you like. You got to have a holistic approach, right? It's all or nothing in this game. So, in conclusion, to realize Martin Luther King's dream in STEM, we must take on ourselves in new and deeper ways. We must be willing to be uncomfortable in order to disrupt our thinking, perspectives, and systems so that we are someone who say, not on my watch, not on my watch. Not on my watch will people be judged in ways that snuffs out their scientific curiosity, their technological innovation, their engineering design thinking, and their mathematical genius. A whole new reality is available for us, which is about a world where STEM access, opportunity, achievement, and participation cannot be predicted by race, creed, color, gender, or economic status. That is big, because the biggest predictor of outcomes, y'all know it's not, anyway. But I want this world where we don't know who's going to be what just because they came from a certain place, or they have a certain color, or they're a certain gender. All children are inspired and empowered to bring their gifts and talents to the table and eat fully from their contributions. I don't mean the side table. I don't mean the table once the real decisions are made. I mean the real table. So I want to thank University of Maryland for bringing me out here to speak to you. As Martin Luther King says, he won't be silent, and I am always going to be here to speak. So I love the invitation to get the opportunity to share my message with you. And I just hope you've gone away with something that can help you in your own space transform how you think about STEM education and think about your work in this field. Thank you very much.
It's a big table, the real table. Thank you very much, Roni. That was a marvelous thing. Now, I got plenty of things to say next time about this speaker, don't I? Thank you, thank you. That was simply marvelous. Thank you. I have to calm down after that. That was quite a talk. It's now my honor to recognize the 2020 Martin Luther King Jr. Diversity Award recipients. The first is our Student Award to Elodie Tendo. It's my honor to present this award to Elodie. She is currently president of the Student National Pharmaceutical Association. As president, she coordinated a very large organ donation event, something which I stand for, and she's organized conferences among the schools of pharmacy, both here and in other institutions, over 21 different schools. She also hosted a conference where over 300 students attended to learn about leadership development and leading with passion, etc. This conference was oversubscribed. She was very successful in attaining a wonderful program. She's involved in over 8 student organizations. That's an awful lot, okay? And I think the most incredible fact is she also, before coming here, was a high school biology teacher in Cameroon. She's a very worthy recipient of this award. I'd like to ask Elodie and School of Pharmacy Dean Roni Ellington to the stage to receive this award. The second award is the Faculty Award, which goes to the Positive Schools Center. The Positive Schools Center sits within the School of Social Work, and in particular the Social Work Community Outreach Service, or SWACOS, as many of us know it, a major initiative here within the School of Social Work. This program, this center, was started in 2015. It participates with many school districts around the region to improve school climate and use less punitive approaches to school disciplines. They identify intentional conversations around racial justice and equity as a key before starting other interventions in the school. Over 90% of the staff participants agree that this is a very worthy program in nominating the program for this award. So I ask Rebecca Davis, who is receiving the award on behalf of the Positive Schools Center, along with our Dean of Social Work, Dean Richard Barth, to come to the stage, please. Okay, so Shante is receiving the award in place of Rebecca. They make changes without telling me. Our third award is the Staff Award, and I'm very pleased to announce that it's Mr. Bill Joyner. Bill's office is right next to mine. I get to interact with him on a very regular basis. He's passionate about the economic development of disinvested communities and has been leveraging our university and our university resources to improve these relationships with the community. Particularly notable and I think important to us is that he has helped recruit over 27 local businesses in the West Baltimore community from marginalized populations to get into the UMB supply chain, which means when you have a catered meal here or things like that, there is now a much higher chance that those programs are catered from a local community in West Baltimore. That is a wonderful thing. So he is focused on small business success in the West Baltimore community and also with bringing more of our relationship with our community and UMB together so that we function as part of the community, not separate from the university. Bill stands very strongly for many of the goals of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and I'm very pleased to award this to him. One thing that was a quote in Bill's nomination, which I think caught my eye, Bill is literally putting money where your mouth is. I expect him in my mouth too. Bill, would you come up along with Ms. Jennifer Lichman, who is Senior Vice President for External Relationships and Special Assistant to the President. So the Diversity Advisory Committee introduced a new contest this year. It's called the School Writing Contest Program, and it's entitled the Martin Luther King Jr. Oratorical Contest, and it was created to showcase the talents and skills of students from UMB's partnering elementary, middle, and high school partners. Students are invited to express their vision of Dr. King through their experiences on our campus or in Baltimore City. They submit an essay, usually of either spoken word or written, a poem, song, or rap. These students who submit a entry will receive certificates, and we're going to award the first through third place winners of the elementary and then the high school groups. There's also a monetary prize, and I believe they've got something to show, don't they? A check?
Right. It's a check that's coming.
A check that's coming. Okay. So would the oratorial contestants from the schools come on up here, please? This is the elementary, middle school.
That is the note. That's right.
So I have the certificates, and we'll name them, and then you can clap for them. The first is Deshauna Taylor. Deshauna, congratulations.
Shoshana was our third place winner. Stephen McCrae is our second place.
Stephen McCrae is our second place award. Stephen, congratulations.
And Brooklyn Butler is our first place winner.
And then our first place contestant is Brooklyn Butler. Brooklyn, congratulations. This is high school, right? And then for the high school, oh, we got a high five there. And then for our high school contestants, third place is Shamar Burrell. Shamar? Our second place winner is Dara Butler. Dara? And our first place winner is Morgan Hood. Morgan? Another round of applause. So one other comment before they sit down. The first place winner's oratorial entry will be in the atrium area for you to review when we get done here. And it's also, I think, in your program as well. Okay? So thank you all very much for being here. Thank you. Now, if I could ask the Hippocratic Notes to come on back up for a second performance. What a Wonderful World.
Hi, so our next song is What a Wonderful World. If you know the song, please feel free to sing along.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and I see clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, "How do you do?" They're really saying, "I love you." I hear babies cry, and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Thank you, thank you. We're near the end, but before we conclude, I want to note that outside in the hallway, you will also see some poster sessions of our CURE scholars. Now, they're in the back here. Would you all stand up so everybody can see you? Thank you. Our CURE scholars are really a first-in-the-nation STEM pipeline program. We heard a little bit about that earlier, didn't we? And we're looking to develop the next generation of medical professionals right here in West Baltimore, starting with the 6th grades. So as you walk out for the reception, the students will be standing near their research programs and projects and be able to discuss them with you. It would be most stimulating to them for you to engage with them and ask questions and see how bright they are. So they are a very truly amazing group. So please join them. And that concludes our celebration for today. Thank you all very, very much.